Hello and welcome back to another season of Under Center with Jake Russell. I'm your host and voice of Fighting Tiger football, Collin Sheffield. Alongside me in his third season as head coach of the Fighting Tigers, it's head coach Jake Russell. Coach Russell, welcome back. It's good to have you back in the studio. And let me tell you what, summer just flies.
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about, right? It's hard to believe. Third season of the show, and felt like yesterday we were wrapping up the season or talking about the last game of last year and hoping to make the playoffs and all that stuff. But here we are, excited for a new season.
Let's give her a little recap of last season. You finished 9-2. You had a great start, 6-0, and then you write a book essentially that Coach Ford entitles "An Inching in Overtime." You fumble on basically the half-yard line at Lindsay, lose there, so that one kind of knocked it back a bit. And then in overtime, a loss to Georgetown in essentially what would have given rights to about a Mid-South Conference championship and maybe even a berth to the playoffs. You did everything you could in that final game to give yourself a case against the University of the Cumberlands in dominant fashion, but ultimately the decision was made that you all wouldn't be continuing into the playoffs, which a lot of the team probably felt was a letdown, even though it was a miraculous season.
Yeah, probably the strangest ending to a season I've ever been a part of. Usually when you end your last game, you know your fate. You've either lost and you know your season's over, whether that's in the playoffs or you don't have a chance, or you win and you know you're going on. And so we definitely walked off the field that day against Cumberlands in our last game thinking we had done enough to be in the playoffs. There was also the secondary factor of, well, even if we don't, there's probably a Victory Bowl opportunity, which they're not having the Victory Bowl anymore moving forward because they've had a little trouble finding two teams to be in it. So that coming off the field on Saturday and pretty much 24 hours later realizing that the season was over was a very strange kind of ending to the year, but it was a great season. I think this was a huge step forward as a program to what we want to accomplish here, our players and our staff. And what I told the team at the end of last year is, when we make the playoffs and have an opportunity to win a national championship this year, it's because of what we accomplished last year. And I know we'll get into it probably a little bit, but we've set ourselves up to start the season in a much better position than we were to start last season, which was really out of everybody's minds because we hadn't done anything to be in anybody's minds. We were way below where we should have been or where we knew we should be in all the rankings and in people's minds. And it took us so long to actually get in the rankings and starting to get in people's minds that there's too much ground to make up. And like you said, just a couple plays, which is football, right? Yeah. We won the first game of the year kind of on the last player right at the end, and that propelled us forward. And then we lose a couple right there in overtime in the last play of the game. And I think that's really motivated our team, and we've seen a lot of fruit from that.
And last season, you talked about it, a start that it took you 6 games really before you even got into the rankings. And you had wins over what was considered, especially by the end, over some good teams, but at the time it wasn't being seen like that. So it took you all the way up until, I believe, Lindsey Wilson to get into the top 25, and then one loss there to a team that had just dropped out of the top 25 and has been a perennial power for so long. And then you all drop back out, and then you have to work your way back up through some big wins over some big teams. It was a rough go, but this year, like you said, we've already got a better start. The Tigers are already preseason number 20, and you'll be taking on, in a tough slate of games off the start, you're taking on a former playoff team as of last year in St. Francis, a former playoff team as in Pikeville in Game 3. And St. Francis is 24, I believe, in the preseason rankings, so it'll be a top 25 matchup to start your year.
Yeah, I told the team at the end of last year and told our new team in January that we were going to go out and schedule the best opponent and put the best schedule that we could possibly have on paper. And obviously adding St. Francis is huge. They've won a couple of national titles in the last decade. They have that name recognition in NAI football. They have a head coach who was one of the winningest, maybe the winningest head coach in the history of NAI that just retired at the end of the spring. So they have a lot of tradition. Even from when I played, you knew St. Francis, you knew that conference produced some really good football, and they were always in the playoffs every year. U-Pikes agreed to play us again for the next 2 years, so that's huge. Obviously, that's a team that won their conference and was in the playoffs and is getting a lot better as well. So our schedule is you'd probably be hard-pressed to find a tougher one in the nation, and that's what we wanted. We didn't want there to be a thought or an excuse at the end of the year that we didn't put our best foot forward and play the best schedule and give ourselves opportunity to beat really good teams and try to get where we believe we can go in the rankings. But at the end of the day, kind of the big message from our staff coming out of last year was don't put it in the hands of anybody else. You win the conference, you're in the national playoffs, and that's where we want to be every year.
So last season, let's get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty at times. The offense was super high-powered, especially when they were just firing on all cylinders, but at times kind of went into some lulls, and that got you into a little bit of trouble at times and maybe made a few games closer than they needed to be.
Yeah, I thought overall a great year offensively, improved in every category that they measure in the NAI. There's some specific things that we're working really hard on to improve this year to take that step from what I would consider a really good year as an offense to a great year, taking that next step to where not only is the offense keeping you in games and scoring points, but it's actually the difference in winning games. And even some of those games, like Lindsay is the one that really comes to mind. I think we actually performed really well offensively, but just didn't score points. And so that's a strange thing to say because, and you can even get the opposite sometimes. You may lose, 60-40 and say, well, look, we scored 40 points, but you probably didn't do it the right way if you gave up that many points. We believe in an offense that impacts the whole game, field position, time of possession, converting third downs, all those things that help the defense, help the special teams, and impact the game. I think our offense did a great job of that. But our conference defensively is just awesome. I mean, you go and face Bethel and Lindsay and Georgetown, and even Cumberland's a lot of last year was really good defensively. And it's tough to score on those guys. So, I think when you get into our conference, there's a reason that we still led our conference in scoring. We still led our conference in scoring within the conference games. But the scoring's probably just going to be a little bit down. You may look at, kind of Power 4, whatever they call it now. The SEC's just lower scoring than what the Big 12 was at a time when they were scoring a lot of points. And so we love that challenge of going against the best teams and the best defenses week in, week out in our conference and challenging ourselves to now go and find a way to, win those games and score enough points and finish the drive where we were just so close at times last year to be in there.
You talk about that good defense in the league, and you definitely cannot leave out Campbellsville in that. Unless I've been misled by some of the NAIA outlets, I believe you all were 6th ranked defense in the nation at the end of the year. Coach Ford has got those guys firing. They are all over the field. The linebacker play was fantastic, and so were the corners.
Yeah, the defense was great all year. Not only did they keep us in games, they won us some games. I think about the Bethel game and even the Lindsay and Georgetown games of keeping us and giving us a chance to win it and score to win those games. But Coach Ford, his staff, he's got the best staff, man, and he does such a great job of leading that staff. The defensive players are just so close and so bought in, and it's so fun to practice against them as an offensive coach every day. We've been telling our guys that this is one of, if not the best defenses you'll face all year, and that's such a huge blessing going against that. And we try to challenge the defense in the same way, but we really have high expectations for our defense again this year. We think it's going to be one of the best in the nation. Like you said, I think they did finish in the top 10 in some categories or several categories last year, and the defense will be different, but we'd still expect it to be very dominant and have 100% trust in Coach Ford to make that happen.
Well, we'll let you take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll sit down with Coach Russell to talk about a little bit of the offseason and some of the guys we've got returning and some of the guys we lost here on the CU Sports Network.
When I never graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to go back to school because I didn't want to work these back-breaking jobs the rest of my life. With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed to come back to school. I felt accomplished, made me feel that I could take on whatever challenges life throws at you.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back to Under Center with Jake Russell. I'm your host, Collin Sheffield, and with me back again is Coach Russell. Coach, the Tigers have had a great offseason. Obviously, you lose some guys, you gain some guys. But one place that we didn't lose anybody was the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And that is another year, I believe, with the same exact coaching staff, which is extremely hard to do, and it sets you up as a program very well.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. It's probably a testament to the university, pouring into our staff. We always talk about providing a great student-athlete experience and pouring into those, but the staff is really where it starts because those are the people that are pouring into the student-athletes. And so we've been very lucky to keep the core of our staff together and really not to lose anybody to another school or somebody to take another job. And I just tell the guys all the time that this is probably not going to be the case for one more year, so let's enjoy every moment we get together. And we've got a great staff of men, which is most important to me, but they can also really coach football. And most importantly, our players have faith and trust in them. So, when they go out and say, we need to do this, we need to do that, our guys get bought into it, and that makes a huge difference.
And I've seen a lot of videos and stuff in the off season. This team is a family more so. And I've seen several times of players going in and the whole team being around the pool at the welcome center or whatever and being baptized. And there's just a lot of great things happening within the program away from football.
Yeah, it's something that we work really hard on starting in January when you have the core of your team. Then even in fall camp, you add in this whole new group of freshmen. We had about 40 new true freshmen this year, and then we added in about 8 or 10 transfer guys from the fall. We had a few in the spring as well. And one of the biggest things we work on through the fall camp period especially is that team chemistry, the bonding of getting them to feel like a family. And that's an amazingly hard thing to do because they're all from different places. They were all stars on their high school team or even their college team last year, and to get them to come and buy into what we're trying to do here. And I really do believe that this is the closest, best chemistry, most family-like brotherhood. Not that the other ones have been bad by any means, but this team just feels different in that aspect, and I think that's going to make a huge difference for us throughout the year.
And when you have a team like that, the retention at the athlete level tends to stay in a time with the transfer portal going crazy, and anybody can ship out whenever they want for a better situation or what they feel is a better situation. All these guys are choosing to stay here, and then that allows you to also be a little bit more picky in your recruiting as well.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Our first spring here, we had 60 total guys in the program. Last spring, we got up to about 105 that went through the spring, and this spring we were at 117. So our retention rate has been extremely high. Now we're starting to lose transfer guys to Division I opportunities and things like that. We have Miles Butler, who started here at outside linebacker for 2 years. He's now with Jacksonville State University, right? We had Jaden Cray, who was first team all-conference for us. He's taken an opportunity at a higher level, closer to some of his family and people, and that's a great opportunity for him, right? We had Quan, who will again be our starting left tackle. Just the way God worked that he kept him here. But Quan got 6 or 8 Division I offers and very well could end up at one of those places like that. And, we look at schools like Kaiser and places like that. They're losing a handful of guys every year to their Division I teams. And if you are really, really good, you're going to have guys that get that opportunity. Some of the rules have made that easier to do, and we love that. We welcome that, right? A guy I coached my very first year as a head coach. We just went through the preseason with the Cleveland Browns, right? And he played 3 years at Cincinnati. University of Cincinnati. And so we're very proud of those. Those are life-changing opportunities for these young men. And while we would like to keep them all, if we do lose them, we'd like them to be those opportunities. Yeah. But man, I think it goes back to the staff and our guys loving playing for our staff. The culture that we've really worked hard to build is why we're keeping so many guys year to year.
The defense, you talk about losing some of those guys like Jaden Cray, Miles Butler, Obi Wilson leaves because of, he just ages out of the system essentially. So a lot of those guys leave on defense, but you brought in some key pieces, one being a Mid-South Conference transfer in Darius Willis, who's very successful at this level and in this conference. And so they're stacked up and ready to go on defense again.
Yeah, we've got a good core group of guys returning. It obviously starts right there in the middle with Ellis Reed. I think Ellis is the best defensive player and linebacker at our level for sure. I think he's starting to get some of the recognition. Ellis just goes out, plays, and has 12 or 15 tackles every single game. And then at the end of the year, you look up and he's, leading the conference and all those things. But he's he really kind of starts it there. But like you said, we've added in some pieces at positions of need where we're trying to fill a gap between, we lost guys like Obi, Paul Maxwell, some of those guys that came in and served us for a year at corner. And now we're trying to bridge the gap between some really talented young guys to now where we've got a couple transfers that have came in and going to be older veterans on that. Same thing with the defensive line. Same thing with linebacker. You know, I've been telling people this offseason as they ask about the team, we really had the exact same team the first 2 years. We lost a couple guys on each side that were contributors, and then now we had 24 guys go through senior day last year. So it's different. We had a lot of big contributors that graduated, very proud, and that's really the end goal of this thing. Some of them even with their masters that can't play anymore. They probably like to, but they're out of eligibility, just like me, right? We don't have any eligibility left, and so now there's some great opportunity for guys that have been in our program, which we really pride with the player development. And then also using the advantages of college football today, where we can go and take a guy that's been in a college program, played college football, and a lot of times specifically at the NAIA level to come and fill those positions of need for us.
When we come back, we'll sit down and talk about the upcoming matchup with St. Francis here on the CU Sports Network.
We are champions of character.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Welcome back to the final segment here of Under Center with Jake Russell. Along for the final segment is head coach Jake Russell. Coach, the Tigers head up north to Fort Wayne, Indiana to take on the University of St. Francis. This is a playoff team just from last year. They are a power for most of the time. Kevin Donnelly is stepping down as head coach. So there's a little bit of a difference there. A new head coach in his first season there. Obviously, he's been there for a minute, so it's a little bit of a change, kind of like Lindsey Wilson was not too long ago. He was already there, stepping into the head coach role. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, like I said earlier in the show, we wanted to go schedule a really tough opponent, and especially if we could have got a team with the name recognition that St. Francis has. Like, that's the dream. One, you really get a good test early. I always tell the staff, and we all say this, the first game of the year is the most fun as a coach because you do all this work and you think your team is this good or that good or lacking here or really good here, and you get to find out Saturday. And so we're really excited just to see where we're at. Right, and obviously it's a long season, and it doesn't mean everything where you're at first game, good or bad. And then obviously with St. Francis, going through a head coaching change, but it's really the same staff, right? Coach Sherman's been the offensive coordinator there, and he'll do a great job. They've got just a machine rolling for many, many years. Like I said, even when I was playing, I remember them being in the playoffs every year. I think they won a couple national championships in 17 and 18, and it's going to be a great test. To be able to go on the road will be huge, right? This is like a playoff type thing. And I always had the dream as a head coach that if we could get to a point where we were good enough to do this, we would go find a really good opponent around the country and try to play them to start the season every year. I feel like we're at that point. Very glad that St. Francis joined on. I think this is a great highlight for NAI in week 1.
So when you get ready for game 1, it's your very first time seeing the team go up against somebody other than yourselves. You don't have to give away the secrets, obviously, but how do you prepare for a game 1?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We had the longest fall camp I've ever been a part of. It's 25 days this year. It's about a week longer than usual with school being pushed back a little bit. And so that was a challenge in itself. We finished Saturday, right, with a scrimmage in the morning. And then you roll back. You basically have, less than 48 hours off, and we're back in game prep meetings yesterday, right, on the Monday of the week. And so the first game, we always really try to keep the focus on us, right? You get to watch the last few games of last season of their team. But like you said, they have a new head coach while a lot of the staff stays intact, just like ours, right? They're watching our last 3 games. There's things we're doing different on offense and defense. There's things they will do different on offense and defense. So yes, we are scouting and preparing and seeing kind of what their identity is on both sides of the ball and special teams. But we're also really trying to keep the focus on what we're doing. And just the small things that make a difference. As you get into the season, week 5, 6, 7, and beyond, you really are able to get really detailed in your scouting report. Everybody knows what we're running by halfway through the season. There's really no secrets at that point. So it's always very interesting, the first game, kind of how opponents prepare for each other. How much do you actually factor in what they showed on film the last 3 games, right? And they're making those same decisions over there. So again, the first game is always super fun just for those reasons. And for our guys, they get to play against somebody else, right? Yeah. That's not their teammate.
So you talk about road versus home. What are maybe some of the advantages to starting out on the road versus maybe some disadvantages to starting out on the road?
Yeah, great question. I think advantages are you eliminate a lot of the distractions. So we'll leave Friday. And, I always, as a player, love the travel, right? You may get to miss a few classes. Once you get on that bus, there's nothing else in the world that matters except, being with your teammates. You get to eat, Golden Corral, which is great, right? It's something different than the Calf or Chick-fil-A, those are great too. You get to stay in the hotel somewhere pretty nice, sleep in a different bed, hang out, have fun. And then our game is obviously 11 a.m. Central. Yeah. It's just 12 p.m., so it's going to happen real fast on Saturday. And then you get to, hopefully after a win, ride the bus home and have fun and get your post-game meal and watch, football. First day of real college football coming Saturday too. So it's just a great day. A lot of, like I said, those distractions of being on campus, even the game day environment, which is the best that we put on. There's a lot of moving parts to that, even as a coach, right? As coaches, we have recruits on our home games, and that takes a lot of time and investment. It's so important for us. On the road, as coaches, we just get a coach. So there's a great blessing in that as well. Disadvantages, obviously, just the comfort of being in your own locker room and a little bit of the ease of, the logistics of travel, right? Because anything can happen on the way to somewhere else. Anything can happen on game day. A bus could break down. You could accidentally pull to the wrong side of the campus, and now you're running 10 minutes late. And, most coaches, if you're 10 minutes behind on something, it's just chaos, right? I'm probably a little more laid back than most on that stuff. But, at the end of the day, the field's going to be the same length both ways. The time's the same. I'd say they'll have a really good atmosphere. I think our guys relish that, so it's almost more fun sometimes to be on the road and going to somebody else's house. So, yeah, there's a lot of different moving parts, pros and cons of both, as you mentioned.
You talk about the true freshmen as well that we have this year, and you talk about maybe some of the transfers that aren't used to maybe how we do things on a game week or a game day. How do you get those guys prepared and settled into what they need to do and what the expectation is?
Yeah, what I always tell the true freshmen is please make it through fall camp, because this is not real. Like these 3 weeks, which this year was a little over 3 weeks, it's usually about 2.5. This schedule is the only time you'll ever have this schedule through the year. Once school starts, your time committed to mandatory football activities goes way, way down, right? We're just meeting, practicing, and lifting weights a couple hours a day, really 4 days a week, and then we're getting ready for a game and we're playing a game, right? And then over half our team doesn't actually dress and play in the game on Saturday, so they have their own routine. Now time management becomes a huge deal, right? And you mentioned true freshmen. I think it's important to touch on. We're going to play a decent amount of true freshmen this year. Last year, we only had one true freshman that didn't redshirt, and that was Justice, and that was obviously a unique scenario with Jagger's injury where he was spotting him here with some of the stuff. This year, we're going to play a lot of true freshmen. We're going to have some that I think are going to start on Saturday and play big roles, and that's very exciting, right? And at the end of the day, I always tell them the guy across from you in the game is not going to say, hey, how old are you, right? Yeah. And he's like, oh, you're only 18, I'm going to take it easier. Oh, you're a 24-year-old senior, let me help you out. They don't care. It's all the same at the end of the day, but those guys are going through their first game week with us. So now we're trying to teach these guys how do you prepare for an opponent in college in the way we want to compared to probably how you were doing it last year. When I was in high school, Tuesdays was offensive day. Wednesday was defensive day. You literally didn't do both on the same day, right? And so now these guys are obviously, some of them are getting a much different taste. Some of them, that came from bigger or better programs are kind of getting the same. So yeah, this week's very new for a lot of the guys as well.
Coach, we'll let you get back. I know you got a busy day and a busy week ahead of you with the first week coming up. Thank you for sitting down with us and chatting before St. Francis.
Absolutely. Excited for this season.
The Tigers hit the road for week 1 as they take on the University of St. Francis in Fort Wayne. As you heard, that is in Central Time, so 11 o'clock Central start, but a 12 p.m. Eastern start. Myself and Khalil Baker will be there. You can join us on 88.7 The Tiger for game coverage, as well as on the TuneIn app. You just look up 88.7 or WLCU, and you can find us there. Thank you for tuning in to Under Center with Jake Russell.